Folks, I'm genuinely really worried about our country, as you may have noticed. I know that the left dominate our schools and universities and media and the public service bureaucracy. I know that the public service is huge and getting huger and more costly by the second. I know that we are insanely in debt and that we're printing money and that we're causing inflation. And I know that people keep voting for the Greens because they think they're nice, and for Labor because they think they're the working person's party and stand up for the little guy. That's all bad enough. But we at least used to have a counterbalance to all that. We used to have a business class who understood that life isn't as sweet and nice as the people on the left like to imagine it is, and who would bring a dose of grown-up reality to the table every now and again. Now, capital, unfortunately, has gone woke too. Corporations and the big superannuation funds who hold half the money that this country has for private investments are now woke as well, or at least pretending to be. And the Liberal and National parties are woke in fear of being caught out for not being woke enough. We are in deep trouble. Education is woke, journalism is woke, and this week it really showed just how dangerous the left really was fully on display. First, we had our treasurer, Jim Chalmers, giving a speech where he said that Peter Dutton was the most divisive leader of a major political party in Australia's modern history. And not by accident, but by choice, he said. And 10 News reported on that.
The Treasurer says it is dangerous and his divisiveness should be disqualifying. Jim Chalmers used those words in a speech, then doubled down on radio this morning.
I think some of these things about Peter Dutton's strategy need to be pointed out. You know, he is the most divisive political leader that I've seen in my lifetime. And this is a deliberate choice by him. It's not some accident. He divides deliberately, almost pathologically.
Right. So the political party that gives us identity politics, literally the ideology that seeks to divide people on ridiculous, immutable characteristics like race, gender, and sexuality, the party that brought us the voice referendum, that party is lecturing the right side of politics about divisiveness. Seriously? The party that wanted to enshrine division of Australia by race into our constitution is telling Peter Dutton that he is divisive. Their definition of divisive is simply anything that doesn't agree with what they think. 10 News reported that Dutton had this to say in response.
But he wants to talk about everything but his failure in the economy. Now, if Australians were doing it so well and the economy was running, as great as Jim Chalmers claims it is, why is he dedicating a speech to me?
Good question. Jim Chalmers, our treasurer and Albo's right-hand man, is a doctor. Not of medicine, he has a doctorate of philosophy, a PhD in political science. Politics is not a science, of course, but never mind that, that's our Aussie universities. And Dr. Chalmers' whole life has been in politics. He wrote a long essay that was published in The Monthly magazine last year in which he laid out his plan to fix capitalism. Okay, well, he's humble, that's for sure. No delusions of grandeur there. Guess how he wants to fix capitalism? I read the whole article. It was a great insomnia cure. He wants to fix capitalism the same way that all lefties have wanted to fix capitalism since the 19th century, with more active involvement by the government to favour businesses that will do what the government wants them to do, to suit the government's social and environmental priorities. Dr. Jim calls it values-based capitalism. Sounds so noble. I call it what it is, socialism. And another bloke already had this idea, Jimbo. His name was Karl Marx. It got tried in the 20th century. Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in a spectacular, mass murderous fashion. What works is free markets and liberty, and governments butting out as much as is possible. Not so much fun for the control left, because then they don't get to control everything and boss us all around. Now, poor old Jim is freaking out because reality, that is free markets doing what free markets will do, no matter what governments try to do to stop them, is doing what reality does. When you print and spend money you don't actually have, you get inflation. You can't just print more money without it devaluing the money that's already out there and sending prices up. Someone needs to explain this to the Liberal Party too, by the way. So now we have high inflation. Of course, you knew that already, but new inflation data out on Wednesday confirmed that inflation in the year to July was higher than market expectations. It was 3.5%. That's higher than the Reserve Bank's target range of 2 to 3%, which means they won't be bringing interest rates down anytime soon. Surprise. And this is despite the happy handouts of the money that the Labor governments have been giving away all over the country to try to hide that reality of inflation, all the energy rebates and stuff. The Reserve Bank almost put up interest rates again in August, and they probably will do it at least one more time before the year's out, I reckon. So you can expect that the base rate that the Reserve charges banks to borrow money from it goes from the 4.35% it is now to 4.6% before anything starts to come down again. Factoring where electricity prices would have gone if the government wasn't handing out freebies, and the situation's probably much worse. Many economists are now saying that we won't see an interest rate cut in the first quarter of next year. Some say there might be one in February, but these are the same people who said there'd be 3 to 4 cuts this year. So I'm not buying it. Opposition Treasury spokesman Angus Taylor also reckons there's no relief in sight, noting that since the 2022 election, the price of everything is up 10%. He's been reported as saying that gas is up 33%, rent is up 16%, and electricity 14%, even with all the rebates. So now all Jim and Albo can do is throw personal barbs at Peter Dutton. They're doing what every lefty does online when they can't win an argument. They go for personal attacks, ad hominem. In fact, they usually start with the personal attacks, actually, because to them the world is just divided into the cool kids and the uncool kids, because that reflects their capacity for intellectual thought. Many of them are still mentally stuck at uni or high school where their crazy ideas were propped up by equally wacky academics, shielded from the real world. Horrifying thing number 2 that happened this week that really depressed me about the state of our nation's governance was the pure insanity of Tanya Plibisek, Albo's intrepid environment minister. In case you missed it, she blocked at the very last minute, after 4 years of planning and getting approvals from the government, at the last minute, she blocks $1 billion coal mine that would have brought $200 million in royalties a year into New South Wales, plus hundreds of millions more in rates and taxes as well, and it would have created 800 jobs. And all that economic flow-on benefit that would have come for that as well. That move was so stupid that even her fellow New South Wales Labor colleague, the Premier, Chris Minns, condemned it, as Sky News reported this week.
I've said, Mr Chair, I'm disappointed by the decision from the Commonwealth Government. The application was made in 2019. It's gone through the Independent Planning and Assessment Commission, as well as every other government department in New South Wales. And to be knocked over at the 11th hour is disappointing in terms of mining gold and other critical minerals in New South Wales, which we desperately need because coal mining is under pressure, particularly when it comes to export market.
Thank God somebody gets it. New South Wales Labor Premier Chris Minns chastising his own party's federal government for this crazy move. Plibisek's 11th hour pulling of the pin on the permissions for the mine to build a tailings dam in a particular area was because of Aboriginal cultural issues, apparently, although it turned out to be nonsense in itself, with a major Aboriginal body saying there were no issues. Whoops. Reality is that she was trying to sweeten up the Greens and Green voters because Labor desperately needs the Greens' preferences in inner city seats like hers. This move caused the mining company to pull the pin on the whole project, saying it's not worth it and it'll take 5 to 10 years to get it back on track with a new location for the tailings dam. Whoops again. Now Chris Minns is scrambling to get the project back on track, realising the massive cost this is going to have to his state. It's a bloody clown show. And worse than anything is what is called sovereign risk. Sovereign risk is what they call it when you send a very bad message to the whole world about your country being not such a safe, reliable, sensible place for investment. Drop out of a Commonwealth Games that you'd promised to host? Sovereign risk. Shut down a mine project at the 11th hour after it's gone through all the approvals process and been given the nod? Sovereign risk. Investors around the world have options, and they talk to each other, especially about governments doing last-minute backflip things that can make investments and planning that takes years disappear in seconds. The market for capital is competitive. And I don't know, but we Aussies seem to be living in a fantasy land sometimes. We think the world is going to put up with all our dumb local political games and garbage. They're not. The money is going to go elsewhere, and so are the jobs. Did you know that for roughly every 2 nurses in Australia working hard to save lives and take care of the sick on the front line, there's 1 taxpayer-funded bureaucrat sitting behind a desk doing admin and making and enforcing rules and regulations? That's right, nearly 1 bureaucrat for every 2 frontline nurses. In most countries, it's 1 bureaucrat for 10 frontline nurses. That's how bloated our public services become. But you'll never hear about it from the regular nurses' unions because they also represent many of those public servants. So says the leading alternative nurses union in Australia, the NPAA. If you're a nurse, it's time to change to a union that will not only look after you without using your money to support the Labor Party, but which is taking on the government health systems to sidestep the bureaucrats and use the savings to pay all nurses 25% more. That's what they want to do. The current waste has got to stop. All the red tape doesn't just suck up resources and time, it actually means that the nurses left on the front line have got to jump through more hoops and it stops them from being able to do their jobs properly. Admin is a hindrance. So join the union that will actually stand up against bloated government. Join the NPAA, the Nurses Professional Association, will make hospitals locally autonomous and run by elected boards. To find out more, just Google NPAA. The NPAA's fees are half the price because none of your money goes to any political party. And as an Other Side viewer, if you use our special code OTHERSIDE1 when you sign up, you will get the first 3 months free or $100 off your annual payment. Go to npaaredunion.com and sign up now for a better union and support the Other Side too by supporting our sponsors. Thank you, nurses, you legends. If you like that clip, there's more where that came from in our full show, The Other Side. You can watch it right here, the latest episode. And please subscribe to our channel by pressing the subscribe button right here or down here. And remember to click that notification bell too. It all helps. Join us and become part of The Other Side.